Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet again another fantastic episode of Keeping It Geekly. We are here with our favorite guest, Richard Fairgray, to break down yet again another book called Where You Die. This is one fantastic read from a new horror series that you recently just dropped, and it is the fifth in the series, 100-page story. Richard Fairgray, welcome to the stream. How are you doing this lovely day?
I'm good. Like I'm feeling very powerful today because I'm on the West Coast, but I'm like still on East Coast time from a con. And so I got up at 4:30 like I normally do, but I feel like I got up at 7:30. So I'm just like, holy shit, is this what other people feel like when they sleep? Because I don't normally I hate being asleep, but I took a little sleeping pill last night because I wanted to like try and get back into a rhythm. Had like some nice dreams. Woke up feeling good, did like the last minute tweaks on the Kickstarter, made the video for it, and here we are.
You're basically like the Batman of indie comics at this point. The man that never sleeps, always on the prowl, always out there, beating down comic panels left and right and making a brand new world for yourself. Richard, I had the chance to read Where You Die, and you know, it might have struck me. I don't know if I read the other titles in this series. So, I mean, before we really dive into the book itself, let's kind of talk about the premise of the series and the idea of it.
All right, yeah. So, tentatively, I'm calling the series Little Horrors because they're actually like pocket-sized books. They're like 4.25 by 6-inch, little 100-page. Horror stories. My thought was I wanted something scary you could take with you. I wanted something scary you could leave in a little place, put in a gift basket, or as my ideal of it is leave this as your toilet reader. Like give someone a chance to like get spooked out while they're taking a shit at your house. Teach them that lesson. And I've been working a lot in horror over my career, and so often like you write a story with your characters from your ongoing series, or you write a story where you're building an entire world, and then it is a horror story, it is a slasher, it is whatever. And I realized like what sticks with you from horror is like the smallest idea that unsettles you, and I wanted to see if I could like extract that idea from each of my like the horror stories I think about all the time, because I'm always doing something, and see if I can extract that tiny part and then just expand from that rather than try and lay something else over that. And so it all kind of kicked off last year. In between a couple of projects, I had this idea. People say like you can never step in the same water twice, and I thought like, well, what if you could? What would be the thing that would make it possible to like, what would make water stay still? And I thought, how still would a person have to be before that stillness leaked out into the world? So I wrote the story about this woman who looks out her window and she sees that the ocean in front of her house has stopped moving. And at first she thinks this makes her incredibly special because nobody else has water that stays still. And then she starts reflecting on all the compromises she's made in her life to stay still for other people, and realizes that stillness has leaked out into the world. And so she walks into the water to see what's down there, and in the process, finds a community of other people who have made different compromises, but all with the same end result of their water has become still. And I won't give away the ending, but like it gets metaphysical, metaphorical, and kind of goes in a weird place. And when I started writing it, I didn't know if it was going to be a comic. I didn't know, I do a lot of like 8-page pieces for anthologies and things. I just put out the final issue of Horror Shorts last year, and I thought maybe this is something new for a new issue of that or whatever. I had to kind of stop doing that series because every cover has a picture of my husband's butt, and the first issue came out 3 years ago, and I was drawing the third one, and he came in and he said, "I don't like seeing this decline. Like, we got to stop drawing my butt on covers, Richard." So, I was a little bit lost on what to do with that. And then quite often my scripts will not have any like panel descriptions or anything like that in them. They'll just be the ideas written out for a first draft.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at this and I realized that I had like 49 discrete sentences describing a feeling. And I thought, like, this feels more like a picture book. This feels more like a picture book for adults. And, you know, I have 11 picture books for kids in my back catalog. And I love that format. You know, like my biggest inspiration growing up was always the work of Maurice Sendak, like first big celebrity crush. And I thought, like, what if I just made a spooky picture book for adults? And I want to be clear. I'd started writing this. It was a Saturday morning, and it was 6 a.m. and I had this finished draft. And I thought, I don't have anything on this weekend. Let me see what happens if I just try and draw one picture per sentence and see if it, you know, whatever. So I take a little more Ritalin than I normally would, and I just work nonstop for 48 hours, and I make this book. And I didn't have anything planned to launch on Kickstarter that week, so I just threw it up on Kickstarter and said, like, fuck it, new thing. And people really responded to it. And, like, you know, whenever I describe it to people at cons, like, people get this look in their eye, this like look of recognition. And if I'm talking to like a group of 3 or 4 people, there'll always be one person in there who's just like, oh shit, as they realize like they are the person who's made those compromises, you know? And it's kind of just become this thing where in the past, when I used to think of a little spooky idea or a little spooky twist on something ordinary, I would put it in a notebook and add it to another story later. And now I'm just, when the idea feels right, I just stop whatever else I'm doing and I spend 48 hours making a book. I made the second one was called Crooked Little Town. It's about an entire town turned physically crooked by the weight of generational guilt. And, you know, it's just a reflection. It's a crooked old man wandering through the crooked woods and the cracked ground. And like as his cigarette slowly bends downward from the weight of the guilt above him and reflects on what turned his town like this so long ago. In the
So
eye,
you mean like actually physically crooked, like not okay. See that like
this is the thing. They all go somewhere beyond. You know, this is not just. This is. You know, I'm turning the spooky part literal in all of this.
Yeah, that's so cool.
In the Eye was done. It's entirely shot like first person, looking down at shoes, and it's this person looking down at their shoes, talking about how terrified they are to look someone in the eye, not because of what they're scared they'll see, but because they're scared of what someone else will see in them. Because if someone sees you, they might understand you, and how awful would you feel if you passed on the burden of understanding you to someone just by looking at them? And then Small Change, which came out a few weeks ago, is about like how much small change would you have to gather to make one big change in your life, and then how desperately would you hold on to that sensation so it still felt like things were possible.
See, I love how deep all those stories are. At the end of the day, it all touches, I feel like, an emotion that we experience throughout our life or even every day. I mean, where you die touches another special like emotion, fear, that we have just as humanity. One of the deepest, rootest, tootiest feelings that we've ever had as humanity. And that's the burden of dying, right? That's where everything comes from. Like religion is based upon the fact that if you die, if you're not a good person, you go to hell, right? It like brainwashes you with the feeling like you need to be good because you need to prepare for the afterlife. You know, the humanity as a whole has just followed the idea of death in itself. So what prompted you to explore, you know, death in your book?
I'm not really scared of death anymore. You know, you saw my last book, Get My Head Straight. My realization that like my big fear about death was always, what if the last feeling I have is a bad one? And you know, then if there is anything beyond this, I'm stuck as that idea. And I learned that your brain floods you with this chemical that like is the ultimate high. You feel better than you've ever felt about anything. And I thought, like, what an incredible way to go out. And what that did was it meant the fear shifted to like, what if I don't live my life well? Like it doesn't matter where it ends. It matters how it's lived. And I know that it will be very easy for me to get swept up in this. In the same way that, like, I think I told you, some fuck on the internet implied that I didn't have work. They implied the only reason I can put out so many books is because I don't have any like enjoyment in my life. And then I stalked them online and found out that they were bragging that they'd seen 30 movies in theaters that year. And I was like, those are dumb numbers for cowards and babies. And now, like, I have like a list on my whiteboard of every film I've seen in the theater in the year, and I keep a spreadsheet of which films I like better than others. And like, we're coming up on the end of June, and with the tickets I already got pre-bought between now and the end of June, I will have seen 80 films in theaters this year. And that's before any of my favorite like local festivals kick off. And I love seeing movies. I'm having a great time. I'm still putting out the same number of books, in fact, more. But like, there's definitely a level of obsession there where it became about the numbers. Like, I'm looking at thinking, oh shit, have I not seen 5 movies this week? Am I failing? Have I not? Like, you get your little phone turning green to tell you you're a good boy for walking 10,000 steps, and then you're like, oh shit, I have been worried about this, and I've done my 10,000 steps, by the way, every day now for over 2 years. My phone has told me I'm a good boy. I'm now stuck with this phone forever, I guess, because what if I lose that information? I need to know that I can look back. And by the way, oh my God, when you change time zones and you lose, like when the 3-hour shift happens between LA and New York, and suddenly your steps move from one day to the other, and like that little tick goes away on that day, and you have to wait till you go back home for it to come back. And there's those few days where you're just like in New York feeling like a failure. See, normal emotions. But like, this is what I'm talking about, is I can get obsessed with this. So like, when I start thinking about how do I live my life the best way or the happiest way, never say no to anything, rush headfirst into every like exciting adventure, do 35 conventions in a year, stay out until 4 a.m. on every night of those conventions, and then be back on the floor 3 hours later ready to sell. Like, it's probably going to take its toll at some point. Everything on my body hurts on a Monday morning, but like, at the same time, I know that I'm like, I have amazing memories. I've had incredible company with wonderful people, and I was thinking about that, and then on top of that, like, my husband lives less than a mile from where he was born. He's 79 years old now. He's traveled the world. His life sounds fictional when he says to people, yes, I have a husband, you wouldn't know him, he lives in a different country and draws dinosaurs for a living. Like, the boy in Hollywood making comics sounds like a fake story, but like, this man has lived. But there is a very high probability he will die incredibly close to where he was born. And most people do. And I hated where I was born. I hate where I'm from. I mean, I don't hate where I'm from, but I hated the life I had when I was growing up. I was a really, really unhappy kid. And I always wanted to get away. And the thing is, like, when you leave a place, you have to leave behind a lot of good stuff with the bad. And you make that bargain of like, which things are you willing to give up? I'm really lucky in that every single close friend from New Zealand that I had, except for two have since moved back there. But every single close friend I had, people who I really felt understood me in my teenage years and in my 20s, all left New Zealand as well. Not for the same reasons as me, but they all did. And so now when I go to England or when I go to Australia or whatever, I can see these wonderful people without having to go home. But I think for a lot of things, like, I talk to my mother every week or so, and she'll tell me about things happening back home, and I no longer have the context. It's like if you miss too many episodes of a soap opera, and you're like, I don't know who these new characters are. And I know what I hated about my life. I know what I hated about living in a small town. And I lived in a city in New Zealand, but in the entirety of the country is a small town. And so it's a real sense of like, those parts haven't changed, but I don't know if it would, like the skin is different, right? And what if you move away from something only to find you've moved into just an alternate version of the same thing? Okay, this is kind of what we were talking about before, is like, these stories, because they are one tiny kernel of an idea exploded out, this story is about 47 different things. it's got, you can interpret it from all different ways. And like, even as I'm trying to describe it, I'm describing it from all the different fears. What if your friends change while you're gone? What if your home changes while you're gone and you don't recognize it? What if you move somewhere new and settle back into something bad? Like you said to me before we kicked off, you're like, people leave their hometowns to get away from their addictions and their problems. But like, that stuff could be coming with you. Are you just denying that stuff is internal? Are you blaming the outside world? There's so many different parts to it. And I think that's what makes these stories like really hit people, is that you don't know who the person is who's afraid to look someone in the eye, but you know that you are as well, and you'll find that connection.
It's really powerful, and it's really, it makes you really think. It's thought provoking to think about just how impactful your childhood and growing up can be, and just how it's weird almost, right? Like, I feel like if you talk to enough people, everyone kind of has that feeling. Like, how many people grew up in small? It's like you're living my life. Like, I grew up in a small town, and I wasn't very fond of it, and like, I essentially like cut off all connection to it. And it's like, what is the power behind like being sucked back into that town, being sucked back into that small one road area, what have you. I know we had one stoplight in town. That's how small it was. And that's if it worked half the time. The power of just getting sucked back into your old routine life. I mean, there's so many metaphors that can be, created just from that aspect in itself. And, I think if someone didn't know you, they would ask you, what would you do if you knew, where you were going to die? But I think you're already doing what you would do if you knew where you were going to die. You're living your life, I would say, above being, to the fullest. You're creating more books than anyone I ever knew, seeing more movies than someone challenged you to have fun. You're like, you know what? Fuck that. I'm going to have double as much fun and make more books. Like, screw you. I mean, but in itself, knowing where you die, I think that would take some of the fun out of life too, right? If you knew where you were going to die, when you were going to die. I mean, like,
well, this is the important thing. It's not when, it's only where.
Where?
As long as this character doesn't go home, she's safe. And what does it mean to be, I don't want to say immortal, but what does it mean to be trapped in a life where you know that there's one decision that could cause you to die, and that is going back to anything familiar. There's a moment in the book where it says could you love without fear? Could you hurt without consequence? And it's like, it says like, there's the whole thing where it's like, she almost gets drawn back in when her father is sick, but she knows that it's the place trying to get her back, not her father. And so she says goodbye to him over the phone. And then it just says, she said, nobody called me when my sister died. And it's like, you lose those connections and people start thinking of you differently in your absence. And there's a heartbreak to that, but there's also that resolve that you kind of have to have, that armor you have to put on of like, if I'm going to live, I have to live without being pulled back in by that one road town.
And I mean, to lose those connections as well, I feel like that's something that happens, even if we're not intentionally trying to do it. You're far away, you can't, come back home, and you lose that loved one that you never get a chance to ever see again. And it can cause some pain, some lasting hurt. How much of this book is, I guess, a metaphor for your life? How many of these, stories that we see within the pages are things that maybe happen to you that we see translated on the page?
No, nothing really directly. I'm in a very weird place where, like, I'm 40 years old and I know 2 people outside of grandparents who have died. Sorry, that's my alarm going off. Come on, touchscreen work. My phone is very old. It's, I've had 2 people in my life have died. One very recently, a friend died in a house fire, and one 2.5 years ago, a man in his 90s who obviously it was expected. But given the life I've led, there should be a lot more tragedy in it. And so there's always this sort of like, part of it comes from my ongoing fear of that I am not going to be prepared for the deaths that are coming, which is not an easy thing to reckon with. I also think it's wonderful that we live in an age where I can be on the phone to you on the other side of the country. I can be on the phone to my mother on the other side of the world, and it doesn't feel different than being there anymore. And again, as I say, all of my closest friends left New Zealand, and I travel to so many conventions that I get to see them all, and it's great. But at the same time, there are parts of my life that I've left behind that were overall pretty terrible. There's a couple of people who I was very close with who I later realized were just truly toxic and truly dragging me down. But that doesn't change the fact that I had a really good time with them for several years. And so when I look at all the stuff that I'm resentful of them for, that's just a shield for the fact that I would do anything to recapture like the good parts. And thinking about the fact that I was my worst self when I was in New Zealand, maybe they were their worst self too. And maybe those good parts were us finding each other and that good stuff shining through. But it's not worth the risk for all the hurt, because I tried to reconnect with one of those people, my closest friend for 15 years. And for a little while, like, I told him everything he'd done. I confronted him on all of the stuff that was really, truly, I don't think malicious, but I think manipulative and bad. And he apologized, and everything was great. And then we decided we were going to talk once a month on Zoom, and stuff got weird almost immediately. There's some of the little behavior started coming back. And then when he found out that I'd written Octopus, without reading it, without looking at it, he immediately assumed that it was somehow going to be an attack on him. And he started threatening me and telling me that I couldn't do anything without him, and that everything I've done since he and I stopped working together was definitely garbage because he was the one with the talent. I'm like, well, what have you done since we stopped working together? In fact, what did you do while we were working together? And it was this reminder of like, oh, actually, if you're stuck on that road, if you're stuck in the place where you will die, that's comforting. Actually, like, the certainty is comforting, and a lot of people will choose to cling desperately to knowing that there are no more corners to turn, and those are not the people that I want to be connected with.
And you mentioned earlier too, like, maybe it was the time and place. Maybe, things happened the way they did because of where you guys were at your points in your life. And part of me, I've been there, and part of me wonders too if maybe that's just our inner selves hoping to reconnect and like finding any means of like rationalizing why things happened the way they did, like
telling yourself, I can't have been this wrong about a person for that long.
Yes. And it's when we explore these topics, you just invoke so much emotion, I feel. And we were talking backstage about this, but with these books, there's a lack of color, and I feel like that just hits a little bit differently than your other titles. We see black, white, gray, and your other work too, the backgrounds were a little bit more detailed. We had a lot going on, and with these horror shorts, well, I don't even know if you'd call them shorts at 100 pages, but with these horror stories, it just seems like the emotion just hits so much differently with the lack of color, with the sentences on one page and then the art on the other one. It feels like you're able to tell it in a whole different perspective.
Yeah, I'm trying to strip away as much as I can so that like you can find your own horror within it. All of my why do I have so many alarms on my phone? Like, even with the stuff that I do that is just like ink wash and black and white art, I normally like scan it in color, and so you get the color of the paper and the color of the blue line and the inconsistencies and the sort of redness of some of the grays. And I we'll play around with contrast and that kind of thing. Play around with like the levels on it so that certain things get a little more blown out, because I like that rich feeling to those books, like Octopus, like Ambitious Failures. But with these ones, I really want them to feel like pocketbooks, like a little, like just a black and white, simple, terrifying object. I don't want it to be did he do this part well? Did he do that part well? It is the fewer things that are happening at the same time, the more it can be one simple object.
So when you were going about designing this story, is it done differently than how you normally do things? Your normal, sit down, get to work. Like, was your preparation any different from your other titles?
I mean, it's like I said before. It's literally like I have the idea. I write I write it. I look at it and say like, and there are 15 of these that have not made it. But where I look at the thing and I say like, does this break down nicely into 49 sentences and 49 images? And or is there a place where I can expand on things? Like there's that moment in this one where when she knows that she can't die on a certain road, she starts to worry that some other roads are the same road, and so she just throws herself into traffic on different roads to just get hit by cars to test to make sure that this is not the same road where she's meant to die. And like I knew that I wanted to have those images through there, and so it turned, but the sentence was like, and so I test it over and over and over, and that could be one thing, or it could be the over and over and over, or 3 different images of her being hit by different cars and flailing wildly, because I wanted that way I could, it can then feel like she's flying up into the air. This is true freedom, is moving through the air after being hit by a truck. So it's usually like an hour to 2 hours of figuring that part out, usually very early in the morning before anyone else is awake. And then I like I said, I take my extra Ritalin and work solidly for 48 hours. And all of them have kind of taken almost exactly 48 hours to make, with the exception of Small Change, which I made on Election Day last year. And I was so determined not to look at like the TV or the computer all day that I actually made that in like 11 hours, because I was just like so tightly wound all day. And that was actually, I released that one 3 books later than it was made, because I was like, I'm not sure if I'm ready to go back and look at my emotional state on Election Day yet. And I ended up having to have someone else read it to let me know if the book made sense.
We have our good friend Chunky Hunky joining us in chat saying, yo, good morning. Welcome to the stream. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Guys, once again, right there is the link to the Kickstarter. Be sure to check it out. We're already off to a hot launch, but you can help us hit even hotter temperatures by dropping an awesome reward. Let us know which one you're going to get. I that $50 bundle for the book and original art page. Always a fan of that. I have an original art page from a book and I loved it. It's up on my wall. I just kind of love seeing, the original like draft or the start of it and then the finished project. I think that's always like a cool comparison between the two. So when you were coming up with the main character for the story, what drew you to this character in particular?
I wanted to, like, the first image that came to me was a little girl running through a graveyard. Just this idea of being like unafraid of death, and like the combination of being innocent and unafraid of death, and being an adult and unafraid of death because you know that you can't die there. I remember I used to joke that like graveyards were the safest place in the world because they already have enough dead things, they don't need you to join it. And I started drawing the first couple of pictures, and I realized like the way that kids move their heads. Like a lot of my kids' picture books, one of the things I always focus on is like the children in them are always moving. You never draw a child standing still, because kids don't. You watch a kid when they're out at a mall or whatever, they're just wriggling and dancing and stepping weird and taking giant leaps, and it's such a fascinating way to experience the world. And I realized that like that movement meant that I could always have her face covered by her hair in different ways. And so you never you never have to see this woman's face. And I was like, oh, that's one more thing I can strip away. This becomes one more aspect of this could be you. Like, I'm going to show you a mouth, a cheek, an eye. This could be Wilson from Home Improvement. It's probably not. But it was just about like finding a character who could be, you know, she's clearly like a woman somewhere between 20 and 50 years old. It's black and white, so we don't know if her hair is gray or her hair is brown or red or whatever. We don't know if we're not doing close-ups on the face. We don't know if there are wrinkles. We don't know her eye color. Like, there's so many things that can be, not like that can be like open to interpretation. All we know about her is that she wants to find something more, and we all can relate to that. Yep. And we all know what it's like to pack up and walk away. And we know that she feels things, but we don't know which parts of it she's feeling. We only get these little glimpses. And then when I was designing, so I thought about that for the kid character and just had her like moving through. And then when I thought about how she would function as the adult character, I was trying to think of a place where, like, to go back to the New Zealand of it all, so many small towns in New Zealand, the highway just goes straight through them, and everything is just built on the sides of the highway. And I started thinking about a friend of mine who is actually from a place like that. And so then the hair and fashion choices kind of just came from her, as someone who, like, I know has lived a life. But you know, I like to be able to do these pages in this very free way where, you know, like all the grays are painted in, and there's a little bit of work done with some markers afterwards and a little bit of shading, but I want it to always feel a little goopy, a little fluid, without kind of falling into the kind of cartoonish, grotesque stuff that I do with my memoir work and Haunted Hill and stuff like that.
You know, I don't think I recalled seeing a single penis, and I was so taken back reading this. Yeah, I was stunned. I was like, is this a Richard Fairgray book? Like,
I had the most amazing thing this weekend. So, like, I was like, the con I was at this weekend is quite a family friendly con, so I'm not doing my dick drawings at this one. And I still do dick remarks in the memoir if people want them. I always offer. And these people came back the next day, and you know, like a few cons ago, someone gave me this, like, they came back and they're like, hey, we know you like old men and we know you like cocks, so we got you this. And they hand me this Papa Smurf holding a dildo. I'm like, oh, I feel so seen, you know. And then this weekend, these people came and gave me an enamel pin that's a banana being peeled with.
I seen that. Yeah, it's awesome.
And then this woman comes over and we're talking and we're getting along very well. And she picks up a bunch of books and everything. And I'm telling her about the dick stuff that I'm doing. And she goes, oh, my kid loves drawing dicks. I was like, really? She was like, yeah, do you want to see it? I was like, sure. The next day she comes in and she's printed out for me a scan of a drawing her kid did when she was 7 of, like, it's the Last Supper, but all of them are dicks, and they're all eating a cake made of dicks with a knife stabbing into it. And I'm like, I'm putting this on my
Can
wall.
I have this? Like,
yeah. And it's one of the most phenomenal gifts I've ever been given at a show.
That's almost like a super bad vibe, right? Like, just can't stop drawing them.
Yeah. And, like, you know, I'm putting out a book. This won't be on Kickstarter, but I'm putting out a book as a Comic-Con exclusive this year. That's the Little Book of Superhero Cocks. And it's not the cocks of superheroes. It's cocks inspired by superheroes. So mostly, like, dicks dressed up in different costumes.
Oh, my God. I mean, there's going to be some interesting ones, too. Some questionable ones. I mean, can Beast? One imagine, like, you know, inspired by Beast? Just hairy? Werewolf style?
Yeah, I mean, like...
Would Beast have a red rocket?
That's a really good question. I
mean, know?
Beast, if you think about the Frank Quitely design on Beast, he's more cat-like than dog-like. So does he become more of that sort of spindly thing? But
again, spiky?
It could be just inspired by, so it might just be like, you know, a sort of thick, furry, warm cock with a nice little pair of glasses that the head is peering down over. Obviously, I will be doing, like, you know, the Fantastic Four, so that I can do one page just completely blank. That'll save me some time.
The other one's just burning.
Yeah,
it needs an STI check.
Yeah, there'll be a rock dick, there'll be a dick on fire, there'll be a really stretchy, weird dick. I like for Reed Richards, I might just do like an uncut cock with a really stretchy foreskin with like fingers like really yanking it out, you know. But it'll be 32 pages, I think, of beautiful drawings of cocks that people can get.
That is, I love it. I love just how creative you are, and it just never.
It's either end, right? It's like here's my fucking heartfelt horror story to haunt you while you're on the toilet. Here's a
bunch of dicks. So Richard, you've been on the show plenty of times. You know the drill already. Mm-hmm. We always ask for a piece of advice and then what you're up to outside of creating. So for the average writer out there who's just consumed by, you know, writing, you know, the artist out there who's just consumed by, you know, coming up with just endless amounts of artwork, and they need to balance some personal life in there. They need to get a little bit of enjoyment in there. What's your biggest piece of advice for them to kind of just break that work grind? Because you're one of the creators who just is relentless with how much work you put out there, but you also have a nice balance where you get to enjoy life. I mean, so for the creators out there who are just like kind of struggling separating the two, what would be your biggest piece of advice for them?
I think you need to remember that if you surround yourself with other creative people, then the social aspect of life is as valuable to making you a better writer or artist as the actual sitting and doing the grind. I don't think it should be a one-to-one in terms of time spent, but like, I know that when I spend time with, like, talking to you, Cody, talking to Stokes, talking to Trevor, I should say full names of these people, talking to other creative people, Anthony Stokes, Trevor Fernandez-Linkevich, Ryan Best, Pat Shand, Cody Dull, like all these people, like they enrich you, you know, and you can find these wonderful connections that then make you think more about, you know, because we are going to talk about ideas, right? We are not going to talk about what shit some other friend is doing. We're going to talk about ideas, or we're going to talk about how a real life event has impacted us, and then what that spins off into a story. And you're going to come away from it feeling alive. And if you watch a movie and it's good, you're going to come away from it wanting to make something of your own. If you read a comic, you're going to come away from it wanting to make another comic. And I think all of that is incredibly valuable. And I know that it's really hard to do. And so maybe, even though I think I take it too far, maybe let yourself have a little obsession. You know, I work a lot faster when I set up. I don't have this anymore, but at my old place, I had bought an old school bell system from the 70s, and I hooked it up around the house. So a school bell would ring every hour to let me know to move to a different classroom, by which I mean different desk around the house. And so I had all these different projects going at the same time, and I was able to like really like have a little like Pavlovian trigger in my head that just said, now you're thinking about this one. And maybe you just need the same thing. Like, I can obsessively see a certain number of movies a week because some fuck on the internet said I didn't see enough. And I can do my walking and get my steps so my phone tells me I'm a good boy, because my phone will tell me I'm a good boy. And I can use that walking time to pace around while I'm on the phone to a friend talking about cool stories. Like, you gotta just find the ways to, like, creativity wriggles its way into every aspect of your life. So don't get too hung up on, I have to be at my desk 17 hours a day. Maybe it's 15.
Maybe it's 15 and a half. Yeah, you got to push it. You got to figure it out. Richard, always a blast getting you on. Last but not least, what have you been watching? What have you been reading? Have you checked out Mickey 17? I think that just hit Netflix, so I had a chance to kind of watch that as well.
I thought Mickey 17 sucked butts, honestly. Robert Pattinson is fantastic. He's very, very good in it. He's the best part of it. I think that the film reads very differently in a post-election nightmare. If that film had come out when it was meant to, I think we would have all viewed it as like sort of like, isn't it fun to do a little like satirical parody of Trump with the Ruffalo character? But seeing it now, it's just like, oh no, but this isn't funny. Yeah. I like Bong Joon-ho's films a lot. I like his. I don't like his English language ones as much. I like Snowpiercer a lot.
Snowpiercer was insane.
Yeah.
Insane. I really loved how, I mean, like the beginning of it, like the way it just like, you're presented with one idea, and then the whole entire time it was just a setup, and it's just like when that hits you.
Train. It's just, that is what it is. It's an unstoppable train.
Yes.
Brilliant. Things I've seen recently that I really liked. There's a film called Pavements that's in limited release right now. If you're familiar with the band Pavement, they were a very influential band through the 90s. And this is ostensibly it's a documentary about their reunion in 2023 to do a world tour. And at the same time, it is a stage musical inspired by the music of Pavement, and it is a biopic about the tumultuous mid-90s era of Pavement. And the three films the three different stagings are cross-cut between each other with the backdrop of the opening of a Pavement museum. So it becomes like this definitive film about the band by being every possible kind of iteration of what a film about the band could be.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes to the point of two films playing on the screen at the same time with the volume going up and down on each one, so that you're getting different interpretations of the same exact moments at the same time. It's truly, truly phenomenal. I loved every part of it. This film was made before things like The Rehearsal became what they are. But I think we're entering this really interesting point where the zeitgeist is about, like, we've gone beyond meta storytelling of winking at the camera, and we've gotten to a place of we are exploring what it looks like when we reshape reality in order to create a fiction. And I think that's really, really fucking cool. And what else? I've seen everyone should see Presence, the one of Steven Soderbergh's 3 films for this year, because he is the me of filmmaking. It's a chilling fucking film. Watch it in the dark. Watch it on the biggest screen you can find. Obviously, it's a ghost story shot entirely from the perspective of the ghost. So this ghost is floating around this house, and you are seeing everything as the ghost sees it. You never leave the house, and you hear things happening in different rooms, and you float with him. And it's even though you know what you're seeing, and you know you're seeing through the eyes of a ghost, every single time that ghost then moves something, by looking at it, you don't see a hand, you just see a book move a little bit. Mm-hmm. It wrecks you. It's so good. So everyone should see that.
I'm definitely gonna have to check those out. I always love hearing about like films that kind of just break the mold a little bit, break what you're used to seeing. And just you as a creator, I think you really have a knack for doing the same with your work. And Richard, it's always a joy to get you on the show. This has probably been one of my favorite interviews today. I think we had a really good conversation. I loved how deep, we had a chance to really just get deep and metaphorical this time around, and it's nice. It's nice to hit that in a conversation. So Richard, as always, it's been a pleasure. Everyone watching, this is a launch party. We are launching this thing off, Where You Die, live on Kickstarter right now. Be sure to hit this link in chat, in the description. You're able to back, we would love to see that happen, but again, just put it wherever you can. Word of mouth is 100% free.
And remember, the easy way to remember it, kickrichard.com.
kickrichard.com. So everyone, be sure to check that out. I hope you all have a fantastic Tuesday, but most importantly, guys, keep it geekly.